The alarm started ringing across the bridge of the starship called Valiant. Commander Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the sound made him jump. He put down his cup and looked at the main screen. Something important was happening. Amy Brooks sat at her station. Her fingers moved fast across the glowing buttons. She was the communications officer, and she looked worried. The computer was trying to translate a message that was coming from deep space. It was a message that made everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing. "Commander, we are getting a distress call," Amy said. Her voice was shaking a little. "It is coming from the Velan colony in Sector 7. They are being attacked." Jake felt his heart beat faster. The Velan were peaceful aliens. They never hurt anyone. They loved art and music and poetry. They had no weapons and no army. The idea of them being attacked made Jake angry. Who was attacking them? Jake asked. He already thought he knew the answer. He did not like what he was thinking. Amy checked her screen again. "It is the Crater Swarm, sir." Everyone on the bridge became very quiet. The Crater Swarm was something that scared most people in the galaxy. They were like insects, but much bigger and much smarter. They traveled in huge groups and ate everything they found. Planets, ships, and even entire civilizations disappeared when the swarm came. They never stopped. They never showed mercy. They just consumed everything. Jake stood up from his chair. He was a tall man with short, dark hair. He had been in the military for 15 years. He had seen many battles. But this was different. The Velan needed help, and they needed it fast. "How much time do they have?" Jake asked. Amy looked at her readings. "Maybe 2 days. Maybe less. The swarm has already destroyed their defense satellites. They have nothing to protect themselves with." Jake looked around at his crew. Every person was watching him. They were waiting for him to make a decision. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years. In that short time, they had made a reputation. Other aliens called humans dangerous. They called Earth a death world. They said humans were too violent, too aggressive, too willing to fight. But humans had another quality too. They helped people who needed help. "Send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we are activating Protocol Shepard. Then set our course for the Velan colony. Maximum speed." Kyle Patterson was the second in command. He was older than Jake, and he had more experience. He looked concerned. "Sir, we are not supposed to do this. The Council has rules. We need permission first." Jake turned to face him. His eyes were hard and determined. "The Council is 3 weeks away. The Velan do not have 3 weeks. They do not even have 3 days. We are going to help them." Kyle nodded slowly. Then he smiled a little. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who knew what was coming. "Yes, sir." "Helm, you heard the commander. Get us there as fast as possible." The Valiant was a powerful ship. Its engines roared to life. The ship moved forward so fast that most aliens would feel sick. But humans were used to it. The ship jumped to faster than light speed and headed toward the Velan colony. Jake walked to his private office. He needed to send a special message to Earth. He was about to ask for something that had only happened once before. 2 years ago, during the Kryn conflict, Earth had sent its full military force to stop a war. Now Jake was asking them to do it again. He recorded his message. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the UES Valiant. I am requesting immediate military support for the Velan colony at Sector 7. The Crater Swarm is attacking. The Velan will be extinct in less than 48 hours without intervention. I am requesting activation of the Deathworlder Armada. We need every ship we can get. Morrison out." He sent the message and waited. It would take time for Earth to respond. Time that the Velan did not have. On Earth, in the Military Command Center, Admiral Peter Harris received the message. He was an older man with gray hair and many medals on his uniform. He had fought in every major conflict that humanity had been involved in since joining the galactic community. He read Jake's message 3 times. Then he picked up a red folder that sat on his desk. It was sealed with special locks. The folder contained orders that every commander hoped they would never need to use. "Activate the Armada," Peter said to his assistant. "All 12 carrier groups. I want them in Velan space within 3 days." His assistant looked shocked. "Sir, that is over 400 ships. The Council will think we are starting a war." Peter looked at him with cold eyes. "The Council can think whatever they want. A peaceful species is being attacked. They send a distress call. We are answering it. Now send the order." The order went out across all of human space. From Earth to Mars, from the asteroid mines to the deep space stations, every military ship received the same command. The Deathworlder Armada was being activated. It was time to go to war. Ships that had been waiting in orbit suddenly came alive. The Resolute, the Endeavor, the Defiant, and hundreds more. Big carriers that held smaller fighter ships. Destroyers with powerful weapons. Support ships with supplies and repair equipment. All of them were crewed by men and women who had volunteered for the most dangerous job in human military service. They protected those who could not protect themselves. Lisa Morgan was the captain of a carrier ship called the Thunderchild. She was near Jupiter when she got the orders. She read them carefully. Then she pressed a button that let her speak to everyone on her ship. "This is the captain speaking. We have received orders. A peaceful alien species is under attack. We have been ordered to respond. I will not lie to you. This will be dangerous. The Krator swarm does not negotiate. They do not retreat. They do not take prisoners. But we are going anyway, because that is what we do. We protect the innocent. All stations prepare for combat operations. We are going to war." All across her ship, the crew moved into action. These were people who had trained for years. They knew their jobs. They knew the risks. But they also knew why they were doing this. Danny Foster was a young pilot. He checked his fighter ship one more time. He had flown against pirates before. He had fought raiders and smugglers. But he had never fought anything like the Krator swarm. His hands were steady on the controls. They had to be. Other people were depending on him. Back on the Valiant, Jake watched his tactical display. More and more human ships were reporting in. They were coming from everywhere. From Mars orbit, from the mining colonies in the asteroid belt, from deep space patrol routes, even from exploration missions beyond Council space. "Sir, we are getting fleet coordination data," Amy reported. "We are going to have a lot of company." Jake smiled a little. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator. "Good, the Velan asked for help. They are about to learn what happens when humans hear a distress call." The Krator swarm had no idea what was coming toward them. They had destroyed many civilizations before. Every time the aliens had either run away or been consumed. The swarm did not understand fear. They did not know mercy. They had never met an enemy that fought back with real determination. They were about to meet humans. They were about to learn why Earth was called a death world. They were about to discover what happened when you attacked someone that humans decided to protect. The galaxy was watching. Some species were scared of what humans might do. Other species were hopeful. But everyone knew that something important was about to happen. The Deathworlder Armada was on its way, and nothing would stop them from reaching the Valen colony in time. The planet Priathus looked beautiful from space. It had green forests and blue oceans. The Valen people lived there in peace. They built their cities to blend with nature. They never harmed their world, but now their beautiful planet was under attack. Elder Velen Kier was the spiritual leader of his people. He stood in an observation dome deep underground. He was looking up at the sky through thick glass. The sky was dark because Krator ships were blocking the sun. There were thousands of them. They looked like giant insects made of dark metal and organic material. They moved together like one creature. The Elder was old. He had lived for many cycles. He had seen many things. But he had never seen anything as terrifying as the swarm. His people were hiding in underground shelters. They were singing their death songs. Parents held their children close. Everyone knew they were going to die. "Elder," a young Velan approached him. "We are receiving a transmission. It is not from the Council." The Elder turned. His four eyes blinked in confusion. "Then who is it from?" The answer came on their communication screen. A human face appeared. The man looked tired, but his eyes were determined. This was Commander Jake Morrison. "Elder Velenkir, my name is Commander Jake Morrison. I am from the United Earthship Valiant. We received your distress call. We are coming to help you. Hold on. We will be there in 6 hours." The Elder felt his body shake. He could not believe what he was hearing. "Commander, you are only one ship. The swarm has thousands of ships. You will die for nothing." Jake's face did not change. He looked calm. "Elder, I am not alone. And humans do not give up. We will be there soon. Keep your people safe until we arrive." The screen went dark. The Elder stared at it for a long time. One ship. What could one ship do against the endless swarm? He did not understand. But something in the human's voice made him feel hope. It was small hope, but it was hope. On the Valiant, Jake was meeting with his senior officers. They were looking at tactical displays. The news was bad. The Krator had committed at least 5,000 bioships to the attack. There were small fighters and huge ships the size of cities. "We are badly outnumbered," Kyle Patterson said. His voice was flat. "Even when the Armada arrives, this will be a terrible fight." Susan Wells was the Marine commander. She wore heavy combat armor. Her face was serious but not scared. "The Krator fight like animals. We fight like humans. There is a difference. We can win this." Amy Brooks was checking the latest updates from Earth. "Sir, we have confirmation from Earth Command. Admiral Harris is bringing the entire home fleet. 12 carrier groups. 437 ships total. They will arrive in 70 hours. Jake did quick math in his head. "We will arrive 64 hours before them. We need to buy the VLAN time." Kyle shook his head. "One ship against the swarm for almost 3 days. That is suicide, sir." "No," Jake said firmly. "That is holding the line. That is what we do. That is what humans have always done." All across human space, similar conversations were happening on hundreds of ships. Captains were briefing their crews. Marines were checking their weapons. Pilots were practicing in simulators. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew the risks. But they all kept preparing anyway. On the carrier Maelstrom, Captain Greg Phillips was talking to his fighter squadron leaders. "The Krator bioships are tough, but they can be destroyed. They use numbers to overwhelm their enemies. We will use precision strikes to take out their command ships. Once we break their coordination, they become confused." Helen Price was the commander of the 7th Fighter Wing. She raised a question. "Sir, intelligence reports say the Krator can adapt quickly. If we use the same tactics too many times, they will learn to counter them." Greg nodded. "Then we stay creative. We are human. We are good at improvising. We will hit them with everything we have and invent new tactics as we go along." On Mars at the Big Olympus shipyard, engineers worked without stopping. They were loading supplies onto departing ships. Carlos Mitchell was the chief engineer. He supervised the weapons loading on a massive ship called the Harbinger. It was a dreadnought-class vessel. It had not seen combat in 2 years. "Sir, all missile tubes are loaded," his assistant reported. "We are at 140% of standard capacity." Carlos smiled. "Good. Load another 10%. If we are fighting the swarm, I want every weapon we can carry." "Sir, that exceeds safety protocols." "So does fighting 5,000 enemy ships. Load the missiles." The Harbinger launched from Mars 6 hours later. Its hull was covered with weapons. It joined other heavy warships. Together they formed the assault group that would lead the attack. They would break through the enemy lines so other ships could follow. The Valiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Priathus system. What Jake and his crew saw made them all stop breathing for a moment. The Krator swarm was worse than the reports had said. The entire inner system was filled with bioships. They were dark organic vessels that glowed with strange light. They moved in perfect formation. They had already stripped the outer planets of resources. Now they were moving toward Priathus itself. "My God," Amy whispered. "There must be 10,000 of them." Jake's hands gripped his command chair tightly. "Take us into the system. I want weapons ready to fire. Send a message to the VLAN. Tell them help has arrived." Kyle looked worried. "Sir, we are one ship against thousands." Jake smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator. "Then let us make sure they remember this one ship. All hands to battle stations. Let us get their attention." The Valiant surged forward. One human ship was charging toward an enemy force that had destroyed entire civilizations. Its weapons began firing. The railguns shot tungsten rods at incredible speed. Each shot hit a Krator bioship with the power of a nuclear explosion. The swarm noticed immediately. 500 bioships broke from their formation. They turned toward the Valiant like white blood cells attacking an infection. They launched acid missiles and clouds of fighter organisms. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered calmly. "Amy, send an update to Earth Command. Tell them we have engaged the enemy, and tell them to hurry." The Valiant began dancing through space. It dodged and weaved while its weapons kept firing. Every shot destroyed a Krator ship, but more kept coming. The battle had begun. Down on Priathus, Elder Velenkir watched from the underground bunker. He saw one small ship fighting against the massive swarm. The ship refused to retreat. It kept fighting even though it was hopelessly outnumbered. "What kind of beings are these humans?" the Elder asked out loud. His young assistant had studied human culture. He answered quietly, "They call themselves Deathworlders, Elder." They come from a world that tried to kill them every single day. They learned to fight back, and they never learned how to quit. High above the planet, the Valiant proved those words true. It was holding the line alone against impossible odds. It was buying time for the innocent people below. And somewhere in deep space, hundreds of human ships were racing toward them at maximum speed. They were eager to join the fight. The galaxy was about to see what happened when you threatened someone under human protection. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were called Deathworlders. The galaxy was about to witness the fury of Earth unleashed. The Valiant shook hard. Another Krator acid projectile had hit the shields. Damage reports were coming in from all over the ship. But Commander Jake Morrison kept his eyes on the tactical display. They had been fighting for 6 hours straight. One ship against hundreds of enemy vessels. Shield generators at 40%, Amy Brooks reported. Her voice was steady even though everything around them was chaos. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. Damage control teams are working on it. Jake watched another group of Krator bioships explode under their railgun fire. They had destroyed over 200 enemy vessels. But it barely made a difference. More ships kept coming. The swarm seemed endless, but Jake had a plan. He was not trying to destroy all of them. He was trying to keep them busy. "Kyle, how many ships are following us?" Jake asked. Kyle checked his sensors. "At least 800, sir. We have pulled them away from Priathus. The Velan are getting a break from the attack." Jake nodded. This was what he wanted. "Good, Amy. How long until the Armada arrives?" "Still 60 hours out, sir. But we have some good news. The Council has sent a support fleet. They will arrive in 40 hours. Kyle said quietly. "Too late for us." Then he caught himself. "Sir, I did not mean to sound negative." "You are right," Jake interrupted. "We will probably be dead by then. But we will have bought the Velan 2 extra days. That is not a bad way to die." Susan Wells appeared on the bridge. Her combat armor was scorched and damaged. "Sir, we have stopped 3 Krator boarding attempts. They are using some kind of tunneling organisms to break through our hull. My Marines are holding them back. But we are taking casualties." Jake made a hard decision. "Abandon the outer sections of the ship. Pull everyone back to the core. Then we will vent the outer decks to space. Let us see how their organisms handle vacuum," Amy protested. "Sir, that is 1/3 of our ship." "It is 1/3 of our ship we cannot defend anyway. Do it now." The outer decks were evacuated. Then the airlocks were opened. Everything in those sections was blown out into space. The Krator boarding organisms died instantly in the vacuum. The Valiant continued its deadly dance through the enemy forces. Jake had fought pirates before. He had fought raiders and criminals. But this was different. The swarm did not fear death. Each individual creature was just part of a larger whole. They threw themselves at the Valiant without any concern for their own survival. But humans understood sacrifice too. They knew about fighting when the odds were impossible. "Sir, we have incoming ships," Amy suddenly called out. "But it is not the Armada. I am reading 17 ships. They have Council identification codes, but they are not military ships." Jake pulled up the identification data. He felt surprised. Those are independent ships. Pirates, traders, explorers. They are responding to the Velan distress call. One by one, ships began appearing on their sensors. The Wandering Star was a merchant vessel from the Crixian species. The Void Walker was an exploration ship from the Telonian people. The Fortune's End was crewed by different species working together. None of them were warships. All of them were outgunned and weak compared to military vessels, and all of them had come to help anyway. "This is Captain Vreen of the Wandering Star." A voice came over the communications channel. "We heard someone needed help. Sorry, we are late to the party." Jake felt emotion rising in his throat. "Captain Vreen, this is Commander Morrison. You should know what you are flying into. This is a death sentence." There was a pause. Then Vreen's voice came back with humor in it. "Commander, we have been watching you fight alone for 6 hours. If one human ship can hold the line, we think 17 more ships might help. Besides, the Velan write the best poetry in the galaxy. We cannot let them die." One by one, the independent ships joined the battle. They were not coordinated. They were not well armed. They definitely were not prepared for combat against the Krator swarm. But they fought anyway. Their weapons added to the chaos. The Valiant suddenly had allies. "Amy, coordinate with the independent vessels. Give them targeting priorities," Jake ordered. "Kyle, adjust our formation. We are not fighting alone anymore." The battle continued. For another 12 hours, the desperate fleet held the line. They lost ships. The Fortune's End was torn apart by Krator fighters. The Voidwalker sacrificed itself to destroy a huge hive ship that was breaking through their lines. But they kept fighting. On the Valiant, Jake sat in his command chair. Exhaustion covered his face like a mask. They had been in combat for 18 hours without rest. His ship was barely holding together. Emergency force fields were the only thing keeping the hull from breaking apart. "Sir, shields are completely gone," Amy reported. "We are taking direct hits on the hull now. Life support is failing on multiple decks." "How long until the Armada arrives?" Jake asked. 58 hours, sir." Kyle looked at Jake with tired eyes. "We cannot hold for 58 more hours. It is impossible." Jake was about to respond when Amy shouted, "New contacts. Multiple faster-than-light signatures detected." "They are early." "The Armada is here." Jake's head snapped to the tactical display. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel all around the system. But these were not all human ships. Mixed with the massive human carriers and battleships were vessels from the Galactic Council. Crixian cruisers, Telonian destroyers, even small Velan defense ships from neighboring systems. Leading the fleet was the massive Harbinger. It was Admiral Peter Harris's flagship. The Admiral's voice came across all communication frequencies. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Harris. Sorry we are late. Let us finish this fight." What had been a desperate holding action suddenly became a full-scale battle. The human armada tore into the Krator swarm with brutal efficiency. Carrier groups launched wave after wave of fighters. Battleships fired their main guns. Each shot vaporized multiple bioships. Destroyers raced through the chaos, creating paths of destruction. Captain Lisa Morgan led her carrier group straight into the heart of the swarm. "All fighter wings, launch now. Target the hive ships. Cut off their coordination and the smaller vessels will lose control." Lieutenant Danny Foster piloted his fighter through clouds of Krator organisms. His weapons were blazing constantly. "This is for everyone who called for help," he said to himself. He launched missiles into a massive hive ship. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. The tide had turned. The Krator swarm had seemed unstoppable, but now they faced an enemy that refused to break. An enemy that fought with ferocity born from a world where everything tried to kill you every day. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Valiant as the battle raged around them. His ship had held the line. They had bought the time needed. Help had arrived. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Elder Velenkir," Amy reported. Jake nodded. "Put him through." The Velan Elder's image appeared on the screen. His 4 eyes were wet with tears. "Commander Morrison, you came, you held the line. You saved us all." Jake managed a tired smile. "That is what we do, Elder. Someone calls for help. Humans answer." Every single time around them the battle continued. But now the outcome was certain. The Krator swarm had met humanity. They had met a species that protected the innocent no matter the cost. They had met Deathworlders, and they were learning what that truly meant. The Krator swarm had existed for thousands of years. In all that time, they had consumed hundreds of species. Every civilization they attacked followed the same pattern. First came resistance, then came fear, then came desperate retreat. Finally came extinction or absorption into the swarm. Humans did not follow the pattern. Admiral Peter Harris stood on the bridge of the Harbinger. He watched the tactical display with calm eyes. Around his flagship, 400 human vessels moved in perfect coordination. Another 100 council ships had arrived with them. Together they formed the largest military force that sector of space had ever seen. "Admiral, the swarm is trying to concentrate its forces near the 4th planet," reported Commander Kevin Drake. He was the tactical officer. "They are forming a defensive wall." Harris allowed himself a cold smile. "They are learning to fear us. Good. That means they are beginning to understand what they face. All fleet elements advance by carrier groups. I want those hive ships eliminated. Target the largest concentrations first." Across the fleet, human ships executed their orders with deadly precision. The difference between the desperate fight of the first 18 hours and this assault was obvious. The Valiant and the independent ships had been like David fighting Goliath. Now Goliath was facing an entire army of Davids, all of them armed with modern weapons, all of them angry. Captain Lisa Morgan's carrier group struck like a hammer blow. The Thunderchild launched over 200 fighters in 3 waves, each fighter was piloted by someone who had trained for years for exactly this moment. "Gold Squadron, follow me," Lieutenant Danny Foster transmitted to his unit. "We are going after that hive ship. Silver Squadron, clear us a path." The fighters danced through space. Their weapons created explosions among the Krator bioships. Danny locked his targeting system onto a massive hive vessel. It was easily the size of a small city. Its organic hull pulsed with strange light. "Missiles away," Danny called out. He launched his entire payload. Around him, 20 other fighters did the same. Over 400 missiles converged on the hive ship. They overwhelmed its defensive systems and slammed into its core structure. The explosion was so bright that people on the planet below could see it. Down on Priathus, Elder Velenkir and his people emerged from their underground shelters. They watched the battle in the sky above them. What had been a scene of certain death hours ago had become something else entirely. It was a coordinated military operation unlike anything they had ever witnessed. "The humans fight like they are one being," observed the young Velan assistant. "But they are not a hive mind like the Krator. How is this possible?" The elder thought about this carefully. "Because they choose to work together. They do not need a collective consciousness when they have trust and discipline. This is what makes them so formidable." On the Maelstrom, Captain Greg Phillips coordinated the assault on the swarm's left flank. His battle group consisted of 3 carriers, 8 destroyers, and support ships. They were facing over 2,000 Krator vessels. "All ships, concentrate fire on Grid 7 Alpha," Greg ordered. "We are going to punch through their line. Once we get behind them, they will have to split their forces." It was a dangerous move. His ships would be exposed to maximum enemy fire. But humans had learned long ago that fortune favored the bold. Sometimes you had to take risks to win. Commander Helen Price led the fighter screen. Her craft weaved between Krator acid projectiles. "Stay tight, everyone. If we get sloppy, we die. And I am not dying today. I have a date when we get home." Her squadron laughed over the communication channel. It was nervous energy being turned into humor. It was a very human thing to do, making jokes when facing death. The Maelstrom's battle group broke through the Krator line with brutal force. Once in their rear formation, the destroyers unleashed their full weapons. They created chaos in the swarm's coordination. The hive ships tried to adapt, but human tactics were evolving faster than the swarm could counter them. On the Harbinger, Admiral Harris received reports from all across the battlefield. The situation was improving slowly. The Krator still had more ships, but they were beginning to lose their coordination. "Sir, we are detecting a massive energy signature near the gas giant," Commander Kevin Drake reported urgently. "It is enormous, bigger than anything we have seen so far." Harris pulled up the sensor data. He felt his blood turn cold. A Krator ship was emerging from behind the gas giant. It dwarfed everything else in the system. It was easily the size of a small moon. "That is their queen ship," Harris said quietly. "Every hive ship reports to it. If we destroy that vessel, the entire swarm loses cohesion." "Sir, it is the size of a small moon," Kevin protested. "Our weapons might not be enough to destroy it." Harris straightened his uniform. "Then we will use all of them at once. Get me a fleet-wide communication channel." Across the human armada, every captain heard Admiral Harris's voice. "All vessels, this is Harris. We have identified the swarm's queen ship. I am transmitting coordinates now. I want every ship in this fleet to target that vessel. Forget everything else. We hit it with everything we have. One massive strike, all at the same time." Captain Lisa Morgan received the order. She smiled grimly. "You heard the Admiral, everyone. Time to kill a queen." Jake Morrison was still aboard the battered Valiant. He read the coordinates and checked his ship's status. They barely had any weapons left. Their shields were gone. Half their systems were offline. But they had one thing remaining, a full complement of nuclear missiles. "Amy, prepare all remaining missiles for launch," Jake ordered. "Kyle, plot a firing solution on that queen ship. We are going to make our last shot count." "Sir, those are our last weapons," Amy protested. "If we fire them all, we will be defenseless." Jake looked at her steadily. "We will not need weapons if this works. And if it does not work, being defenseless will not matter because we will all be dead anyway. Fire on my mark. Across the fleet, every ship with weapons prepared to fire. Railguns charged with power, missile tubes opened, energy weapons built up their reserves. 400 human ships and 100 council vessels all aligned their weapons on a single target. The Queen ship sensed the danger. It began to move. It tried to escape to faster-than-light travel, but it was too massive. It was too slow to accelerate quickly enough. All ships, Admiral Harris's voice rang out clearly. Fire. Space itself seemed to catch fire. Thousands of projectiles, missiles, and energy beams converged on the Queen ship from every direction. The sheer volume of fire was like a biblical apocalypse focused on one target. The Queen ship's biological armor had developed over millions of years. It could withstand almost anything, but it could not handle the concentrated firepower of an entire fleet. Explosions blossomed across its hull. Chunks of organic matter the size of buildings were blown into space. Its strange glow flickered and died, and then it exploded. The detonation was so massive that sensors detected it across 3 star systems. The Queen ship disintegrated in a fireball that briefly outshone the system's sun. Pieces of it scattered in every direction like meteors. Across the battlefield, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The remaining Krator vessels suddenly lost their coordination. Hive ships that had been working in perfect concert now drifted aimlessly. Fighter organisms scattered without direction. The swarm had been a unified force. Now it was thousands of individual ships without purpose or guidance. All ships, begin cleanup operations, Admiral Harris ordered. Eliminate the remaining vessels. Do not let any escape to regroup. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. Human ships swept through the disorganized Krator forces. They destroyed them with methodical efficiency. Within 6 hours, the swarm that had threatened to consume an entire civilization was reduced to debris and frozen organic matter drifting through space. Jake Morrison sat in his command chair. He watched the final Krator vessels being eliminated. The Valiant had survived, barely. His crew had held the line against impossible odds, and they had lived to see the victory. Amy, open a channel to the surface, Jake said quietly. I think we owe the Velan an update. Elder Velen Kier appeared on the screen. Jake could see tears streaming down the alien's face. All 4 eyes were crying. Commander Morrison, you have saved us, all of us. How can we ever repay such a debt? Jake shook his head slowly. No debt, Elder. Just remember when you write your poetry about this day that humans were not alone. We had help from many species. This was a victory for everyone who believes in protecting the innocent. 3 days after the Battle of Priathus, the Valiant slowly approached the orbital station above the Velan homeworld. The ship barely looked like a military vessel anymore. Its hull was covered with scars from countless impacts. Entire sections were exposed to vacuum. Systems were held together by emergency repairs and the stubborn will of the crew. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge one final time before leaving the ship. Around him, his crew worked to shut down systems properly. This would allow the Valiant to be repaired. Amy Brooks wiped tears from her eyes as she closed down her sensor station. We lost 47 crew members, she said softly. 47 people who will not go home to their families. Jake nodded slowly. The weight of command sat heavily on his shoulders. Every death was his responsibility. They held the line when it mattered most. Every single one of them is a hero. Make sure their families know that. Make sure they understand what their loved ones accomplished. Down on the planet, the Velan had prepared a ceremony unlike anything in their history. Elder Velen Kier stood before a gathering of hundreds of thousands of his people. Holographic projections carried his words to billions more across their world. Today we honor those who came when we called for help, he began. His voice carried the musical quality that made Valen's speech so beautiful. The humans who answered our plea knowing they might die. The independent traders and explorers who joined them. The council ships that arrived in our darkest hour. But most especially, we honor the crew of the UES Valiant. They stood alone against the darkness and refused to break. Jake Morrison stood uncomfortably in his dress uniform. The Velan were honoring him and his crew. He was not good at ceremonies. He was a soldier, not a diplomat, but he understood how important this moment was for the Valen people. They needed to express their gratitude. Admiral Peter Harris placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You did well, Commander, very well. You bought us the time we needed to arrive." "We lost people," Jake replied quietly. His voice was heavy with grief. "We always do," Harris said. His voice was gentle but firm. "That is the price we pay for being who we are. But because of your sacrifice, an entire civilization survives. That matters. Those 47 people died for something important." The ceremony concluded with the Valen presenting Jake with a crystal sculpture. It was a beautiful piece of art that depicted the Valiant standing between their world and the swarm. Light passed through the crystal and created rainbow patterns. It was both beautiful and humbling. But the real impact of the Battle of Priathus was not felt on the Valen homeworld. It rippled outward across the entire Galactic Council. It changed how many species viewed humanity. On the Council homeworld, the assembled representatives met in emergency session. The Crixian ambassador stood before them. His crystalline body reflected the chamber's lights. "The humans responded to a distress call outside their territory," he stated. "They did so without Council authorization. They deployed overwhelming military force. This sets a dangerous precedent." But the Telonian ambassador disagreed. "The humans saved a Council member species from extinction. They did what we could not do in time. Perhaps the dangerous precedent is our own slow response to threats. Perhaps we should be asking ourselves why we were not there first." The debate continued for hours. But the conclusion was inevitable. Humanity had proven once again that they were different from other species. They did not wait for authorization. They did not calculate political costs. They heard a call for help and they answered immediately. It terrified some species. It inspired others. But everyone now understood that humans meant what they said. If you needed help, they would come. Back on Earth, in a quiet ceremony at Arlington Cemetery, 47 flag-draped caskets were laid to rest. Families wept openly. Friends saluted in silence. The President of Earth spoke about sacrifice and duty, and the price of protecting others. His words were broadcast across all human worlds. Lieutenant Danny Foster attended the ceremony. He paid his respects to 3 of his squadron mates who had not made it home. He stood in his dress uniform perfectly still as taps played across the cemetery. The mournful music echoed through the air. "We call ourselves Deathworlders," he thought silently, "because we come from a world that tried to kill us every day. But maybe that is not the complete truth. Maybe we are Deathworlders because we are willing to stand between death and those who cannot defend themselves." Captain Lisa Morgan visited the families of her fallen crew members personally. It was the hardest part of command. Looking into the eyes of parents who had lost children, spouses who had lost partners. But she did it anyway because that was her responsibility as their captain. "Your son saved over 3 billion lives," she told one grieving mother. The woman's eyes were red from crying. "He died protecting people he had never met, on a world he had never visited." That is who he was. That is who we all choose to be when we join the fleet. Across human space, recruitment centers saw a huge increase in applications. Young men and women wanted to serve. They wanted to be part of the fleet that protected the innocent. The Battle of Priathus had been broadcast across human worlds. It had inspired a new generation to volunteer. Meanwhile, in the shadowy corners of the galaxy, species that had been considering aggression against their neighbors stopped to reconsider. The Krator swarm had been a force of nature. They had been unstoppable for thousands of years. And humans had destroyed them in 3 days. The message was clear and unmistakable. Attack the innocent and Earth would answer. Attack the helpless and humanity would come. And when they came, they would not stop until you were defeated. 6 months later, the Valen completed construction of a memorial monument on Priathus. It stood 100 meters tall. It was made of crystalline material that caught the sunlight and split it into beautiful rainbows. Carved into its base were the names of every being who had fought in the battle, human and non-human alike. At the very top, in letters that could be seen from orbit, was a phrase in both Valen and English. They held the line. Commander Jake Morrison, now promoted to captain, visited the memorial during its dedication. His new ship, the Defender, was in orbit above. It was part of a permanent defense force that Earth had committed to protecting Valen space. Elder Velen Kier walked beside Jake. His 4 eyes studied the human with deep curiosity. "Captain Morrison, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Elder." Why do humans do this? You risk your lives for strangers. You fight battles that do not benefit you materially. Why do you make these sacrifices? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought carefully about his answer. On Earth we have an old saying. No one has greater love than this, that someone would lay down their life for their friends. The thing is, Elder, humans define friends pretty broadly. If you need help, you are our friend. It really is that simple. Velen Kier's vocal sax hummed thoughtfully. This is why the galaxy fears you. Not because you are violent by nature, but because you are loyal. There is no force more dangerous in the universe than someone protecting those they care about. We prefer to be friends rather than enemies. Jake replied with a genuine smile. But yes, we are very serious about protecting our friends. As Jake returned to his ship, he looked back at the monument one more time. 47 names carved in crystal. 47 people who had held the line when it mattered most. They were not the first humans to sacrifice everything for others. And they would not be the last. Because that was what humans did. When darkness came, when monsters arrived, when the innocent cried out for help, humans answered. Every single time. Without fail, without hesitation, the Galactic Council had learned this lesson during the Kryn conflict. The Krator swarm had learned it at Priathus. And as word spread across the galaxy, other species were learning it too. The lesson was simple. Do not threaten the innocent. Do not attack the helpless. Do not harm those under human protection. Because if you did, you would learn why the rest of the galaxy called them Deathworlders. You would learn what happened when you awakened the fleet that even the most aggressive species feared. You would learn that humans had evolved fighting for survival every single day on their harsh world. And they had brought that lesson to the stars. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Priathus. The galaxy had changed in that time. Not in obvious ways that you could see with your eyes, but in subtle ways that affected how species interacted with each other. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room aboard the Defender. He was writing reports as usual, but today he was also thinking about how different things had become. His ship was part of a joint task force, humans, Velan, Telonian, and Crixian ships all working together. It was something that would have been impossible 2 years ago. There was a chime at his door. "Come in," Jake called out. Amy Brooks entered. She was now his first officer. She had been promoted after the battle. "Sir, we are receiving a distress call. It is coming from the border region near Sector 12. Jake felt his muscles tense. This was familiar. Too familiar. "What is the situation?" "A colony is under attack by raiders. They are requesting immediate assistance." The colony is mostly civilians. Families with children. Jake stood up immediately. "How far away are we?" 4 hours at maximum speed, sir. Then we leave in 5 minutes. "Alert the task force. See who can join us." Jake paused and then added, "And Amy, send word to Earth Command. Let them know we are responding to a distress call." Amy smiled slightly. "Sir, you know they will approve." They always do now. She was right. After Priathus, Earth Command had given much more freedom to ships in the field. If there was a distress call, captains were authorized to respond immediately. Ask permission later. Save lives first. The Defender and 3 other ships jumped to faster than light speed. They arrived at the colony 4 hours later. What they found made Jake angry. A group of pirates had attacked a peaceful mining colony. They were holding colonists hostage and demanding payment. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defender." Jake transmitted on all frequencies. "You have 30 seconds to release the hostages and surrender. If you do not, we will use force." The pirate leader responded with mocking laughter. "You are 4 ships. We are 20. You cannot win this fight, human." Jake's voice became cold as ice. "You clearly have not heard about Priathus. Let me educate you. We are humans. We do not negotiate with people who threaten innocence, and we definitely do not back down from bullies. You now have 15 seconds. There was silence. Then the pirate ships began powering up their weapons. They thought they could win because of their numbers. They were very wrong. The battle lasted 12 minutes. The Defender and its allied ships tore through the pirate fleet with brutal efficiency. These were not the Krator swarm. These were not disciplined military forces. These were criminals who relied on fear and surprise. When they met real resistance, they crumbled. 10 pirate ships were destroyed. The rest tried to flee, but the Telonian destroyer was faster. It caught them before they could jump to faster than light speed. None of the pirates escaped. Jake beamed down to the colony surface with a rescue team. The colonists were safe, scared but safe. A woman approached him. She was holding a small child in her arms. "Thank you," she said simply. Tears ran down her face. "They said no one would come in time. They said we were too far from help. But you came." Jake knelt down so he was at eye level with the child. The little girl was maybe 5 years old. She looked at him with wide, curious eyes. "Are you a hero?" the child asked innocently. Jake smiled gently. "No, sweetheart. I am just someone who helps people. That is my job. And it is a job I am very proud to do." Back on the Defender, Jake filed his report. But he also included a recommendation. The galaxy needed more than just military response to distress calls. It needed a permanent rapid response force. Ships that could be anywhere in Council space within days. Admiral Peter Harris read Jake's report with interest. He forwarded it to the Galactic Council with his own recommendation. The Council debated it for weeks. Some species worried about giving humans too much power. Others argued that humans had earned the right to lead this initiative. Finally, a compromise was reached. The Galactic Rapid Response Fleet would be created. It would be jointly commanded by multiple species, but humans would provide the largest number of ships and would train the other species in rapid deployment tactics. On Earth, the news was celebrated. Humanity had gone from being the newcomers to being the protectors. It was a role they took seriously. Danny Foster was now a squadron commander. He trained pilots from 6 different species in combat tactics. It was challenging because each species thought differently, but it was also rewarding. The key to human tactics is flexibility, Danny explained to his students during a training session. We do not rely on overwhelming force alone. We adapt, we improvise, we think creatively. That is what makes us effective. A young Crixian pilot raised a question. But Commander Foster, your species is more aggressive than ours. How can we match your intensity in combat? Danny thought about this carefully. You do not need to match our aggression. You need to find your own strength. Crixians are excellent at tactical analysis. Use that. Telonians have superior reflexes. Use that. Every species brings something valuable to the fight. The goal is not to make everyone fight like humans. The goal is to make everyone fight effectively. Lisa Morgan had been promoted to admiral. She now commanded an entire carrier group. But she made sure to visit the families of fallen crew members regularly. She never forgot the price that had been paid for their victories. One day she visited the mother of a young pilot who had died at Priathis. The woman served her tea and they talked for hours. About the son she had lost. About the future he would never see. About the lives he had saved with his sacrifice. Do you think it was worth it? The mother asked quietly. Do you think my son's death meant something? Lisa looked her in the eyes. Your son helped save 3 billion people. 3 billion individuals who are alive today because of what he did. They have families. They have dreams. They have futures. All because your son was brave enough to stand between them and evil. Yes, it was worth it. His sacrifice will never be forgotten, the mother cried. But they were not tears of pure sadness anymore. They were tears mixed with pride. On Priathis, the Valan had not forgotten their saviors. Every year on the anniversary of the battle, they held a ceremony at the Crystal Monument. They invited humans and other species who had fought. They read poetry and sang songs about courage and sacrifice. Elder Velenkir was very old now, but he still attended every ceremony. He still told the story of the day one human ship had held the line alone. He made sure every young Valen knew about the Deathworlders who had saved them. Why do you call them Deathworlders? A young Velen child asked him once. They saved us. Should we not call them Life-Worlders instead? The elder smiled at the innocent wisdom of the young. That is a beautiful thought, child. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps we should remember them not for where they came from, but for what they choose to do. They choose life over death. They choose protection over destruction. They choose courage over fear. Back on the Defender, Jake received a message from Earth Command. He was being promoted to Admiral. He would be taking command of the new Rapid Response Fleet. It was a huge responsibility, but it was also an honor. He accepted the promotion. But he made one request. He wanted to keep the Valiant in service. Even though the ship was old and damaged, it had meaning. It represented something important. It represented the idea that one person, one ship, one crew could make a difference. Earth Command agreed. The Valiant was repaired and upgraded. It became the flagship of the Rapid Response Fleet, a symbol of humanity's commitment to protecting the innocent. Jake stood on the bridge of the Valiant once more. The ship had been completely rebuilt. New weapons, new shields, new systems. But the name remained the same, and the mission remained the same. "All stations report ready, Admiral," Amy Brooks said from her position. She had followed Jake to his new command. Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone might need help. Someone might send a distress call. And when they did, the Valiant would answer. "Take us out, Helm," Jake ordered. "Standard patrol route. And keep all communication channels open. We need to be ready." The Valiant moved forward into the darkness of space. Behind it, a fleet of ships from multiple species followed. They were the Rapid Response Fleet, the galaxy's protectors, the ones who answered when others called for help. The Battle of Priathus had taught the galaxy many lessons. It taught them that humans kept their promises. It taught them that calling for help would be answered. It taught them that protecting the innocent was not just words but action. But most importantly, it taught them that hope was not dead. That in a dangerous galaxy full of threats, there were those willing to stand against the darkness. There were those willing to sacrifice for strangers. There were those who defined friendship broadly enough to include anyone who needed help. Admiral Peter Harris said it best in his speech at the Naval Academy graduation ceremony. "We are Deathworlders. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We evolved fighting for survival against impossible odds. But we did not let that make us cruel or selfish. Instead, we learned the value of protecting each other. We learned that survival means nothing if you survive alone. We learned that the greatest strength is not in weapons or ships, but in the willingness to help those